is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. And we would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same déjà vu, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off. Reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
Welcome to another edition of the Friday FARcast. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thank you for being a bit patient here and hanging on and hanging out while I finish up some personal business and got to the microphone. Getting ready to drop the mic here on Friday. What a week, huh? Oh man! Holy smokes! And we haven't even arrived at the new moon yet, and that's coming. This new moon coming up. Oh boy, conjunct Uranus in Aries, squaring Pluto on the way to its newness. We got to get through this new moon. This is a really important and critical new moon here. We're at the Pisces moon. Pisces will be a theme of today's show to some extent, because we're going to be talking about gas. All kinds of gas. We're talking about gas attacks in Syria, gas attacks in the UK, and the fallout from all these various gas attacks and leaks. What have we been talking about for the last 2 years? Leaks. Sure, a lot of you out there are suffering from leaky gut. Look, we can play with the metaphors, but they're significant. It's clearly there is a Piscean trend that must be addressed as it relates to everything that we've been experiencing for the last few years and really culminating now. As we get to the end of Chiron on Pisces, we're going to talk about that in fair detail, in a fair amount of detail. As we move through this week, we got to have a recap, and I got to get you up to speed because things are happening very quickly here on a number of different fronts. So there is a war going on right now. And it's not happening in Syria. The war is taking place within the boundary or the borders of this country. Yes, we still have borders and we still have boundaries. They're still in place in as much as a lot of the world would like for that to be non-existent or ignore it. They are still happening. Try to go to a foreign country without a passport, or stay there without a passport, and see how well that goes over. It won't go over well at all, trust me. So there's a war taking place right now, and the war is going on a number of different fronts. So this is really happening. It's not a metaphor. It's not an allegory. This is happening. It's happening now. So if we look at Syria, obviously we're at the precipice and the brink of a war. Whether it's against the Syrians and Russia, the Syrians, Russia, and Turkey, the Syrians, Russia, Turkey, Iran, the Syrians, Russia, Turkey, Iran, and China, we could just start stacking who those opponents might be. Truth be told, we've been at war in Syria since Obama went into office. And John McCain went over to the Middle East, decided that he was going to create ISIS. Yeah, that's right. We created ISIS. The United States, Turkey, MI6, Saudi Arabia, Israel, all combined to create ISIS. We were training ISIS. And then the ISIS fighters, theoretically, would then become the Syrian Liberation Army. We're fighting a war there, a proxy war. Tulsi Gabbard has talked about this. This isn't news. They were running the war for 6 years, 5.5 to 6 years, through Hillary Clinton's server in her bathroom. That's why they don't want any of those emails. That's why it was never fully vetted. Amongst other reasons, Comey's been on the Clintons' payroll for years. There's a paper trail with Comey and the Clintons. Mueller was selling uranium to the Russians. That's true. And they're all tied in. And what they're doing is they're doing their best to control the narrative and to have as much damage control as possible. That's how the war was started. We've been fighting a war. We've been in Syria, but we've been essentially creating one of our great proxy armies, which the United States has been doing now ever since 9/11. We've had proxy armies for a long time. But this whole idea of regime change has become very in vogue since 2002. We decided to go into regime change Iraq, regime change Afghanistan. And then we had all these other color revolutions that happened. One was in Tunisia, the other was in Egypt. They tried to flip Yemen, but they couldn't, which is now why the Saudis are bombing the shit out of Yemen. You know, nobody ever talks about those poor Yemenis kids who are starved to death. There's plenty of pictures out there. You never see those on the evening news. You never see all of these politicians wringing their hands. Oh my, look at these poor Yemeni children. They've had a famine for the last decade. Yeah, that's right. They've had a famine for the last decade. And we're selling missiles and bombs to Saudi Arabia to bomb the shit out of them. And even with the famine, and even with the attacks that are occurring both through the air and on the ground, the Yemenis are holding their own. The Houthis are holding their own. Why? Because the Houthis have been at war internally prior to that, and they won. They took over. And now Saudi Arabia is basically having a slow bleed. Yemen is going to become Saudi Arabia's Vietnam. And no matter how many arms or how many deals 00666 gets on the phone and makes while they're over there doing sword dances and activating that eerie globe, they're not going to win. You just watch. Yemen will hold them off and hold them off and hold them off and hold them off, and ultimately it will break the spirit of the Saudi forces. Now I'll tell you why. The only way you can win a war, really win a war, like a long-term occupation in a warlike setting. And I'm not talking about a war of demoralization, which we're also a part of at this point in time. The only way you can win a war is if you have the moral authority to win a war. That means a lot. What is Yemen doing? Is Yemen really launching Iranian missiles into Saudi Arabia? That is such a tired script. I was watching InfoWars yesterday. I generally like David Knight, but even David Knight is losing the script. David Knight is losing. He's totally losing the plot. He had Joe Farah on yesterday. Ugh. Watching that guy made me want to puke. I'm sorry. He's going on and on and on about how dangerous the Palestinians are, and how dangerous Hamas is, and all the rockets and the missiles and everything they're launching into Israel. And you got to be kidding me. That's ridiculous. There's David Knight totally agreeing. Sorry, it's really the other way around. The only way you can win a war is by having the moral authority to do it. Because when you have the moral authority to win a war, you will die. You will die, and you will put your life on the line. You will die for your wife. You will die for your son or your daughter. You'll die for your land. You'll die for your country if you are morally invested and want to protect your rights, your relationship to all those things that hold you to a sacred bond. If you don't have it, guess what? You're not willing to die as much. There's a little warp, there's a little waffle in the internal guidance system. When you have that warp and that warp and waffle, right? What will happen? Well, in battle, it will cause delay. You'll second guess yourself. Fear will predominate as an emotion versus courage. The next thing you know, you're dealing with a whole different set of neurochemical and synaptic responses to the condition and the immediacy of the event. When that takes place, you're not operating at top level efficiency, and you may have superior weaponry. It won't matter. And that's how we operate as humans. If we are split or divided, or we're not fully bought into something, then there's going to be lag time. And that lag time, whether it's a question of the conscience, whether it's an indecisive moment related to some real-time action, that stuff means a lot. It means everything, which is why they want to brainwash you when you get into the military. This is what happens, right? They break you down and they rebuild you so you don't have any of those things. You're a grunt, you do what you're told, and there's no gap between those synaptical responses. Shoot, you shoot. Carry out this order, you carry it out, you don't question anything. And if there's a little love for your country, love for your fellow soldier thrown in there, then you have some emotional fuel for it. That's how the military works, in a nutshell. Break you down, turn you into a machine. Well, guess what? At some point, they're going to have real machines fighting wars. Because at some point, people are going to say, fuck it. I'm done. We're done. And these people that love their wars and want to create their wars are going to need to have somebody to do the fighting for them, and it won't be human. And the mechanized forces that will gather together to do the bidding of the people who are literally powering them up and turning on the switches will have no conscience, and they will have very little response time between what's being asked of them and what they're actually doing. It's the perfect soldier. We're at war. We've been at war in Syria, but they're losing. Why? Because the Syrians actually have, well, two things. Number one, they actually have an investment in, being Syria still. They don't want to have a proxy government that is going to be ruled by, I don't know, some Wahhabist element, because that's really what they want. And what's fascinating is that people on the right, who I think have been programmed to just sign off on the Yanam program, right, which is the expansion of Greater Israel, will protect Israel because they're our good friends. They're changing. These people are changing. I was listening to Michael Savage last night, whom I find actually entertaining. Because he can talk like this and talk like this, and all of a sudden the volume level goes up, and that guy goes from 0 to 60. It's fascinating to listen to. He had this one guy call in. He just had Pat Buchanan on, which I thought, oh, this is interesting. Pat Buchanan and Michael Savage. Pat Buchanan is an old conservative, but I'm telling you, man, he's still sharp. Pat Buchanan is still sharp. Savage played a speech by Kennedy, and Buchanan knew exactly what day it took place, where it took place. Probably even knows the time that it took place. That's how sharp Buchanan is. So you have Buchanan on. They're basically both saying, where is the so-called right as the drums of war are beating? Savage had a shout out to the only guy that was actually even covering this, and it was Alex Jones at InfoWars. He actually was like, and Jones has been last 24 hours. It's all been anti-war, anti-war, anti-war. Tucker Carlson's been on the record. He didn't post Tucker Carlson, but it was fascinating because Michael Savage, after Pat Buchanan was on, he took a caller, and this guy was like saying, "Oh, we got to go in, we got to be strong, we got to nuke him," and Michael Savage just started yelling at him, and he said, "Are you Mossad? Are you Mossad?" I'm like, wow, where did this come from with Michael Savage? This guy's gone through a bit of a pivot now, hasn't he? Very interesting. So we've been at war, and it's a non-winnable war for us. It's another Vietnam. And that's not to say that we couldn't have won Vietnam. We could have won the war in Vietnam. Trust me. But there were too many rules of engagement. There was too much going on. It was all about the heroin trade and destabilization and traumatizing an entire generation. I mean, there were all these other things that were going on in the Vietnam War. And we did a serious disservice to the people of both Vietnam and Cambodia. Because once we left, the Khmer Rouge went in and slaughtered thousands upon thousands of Cambodians. It was terrible. It was because we left. Our track record over the last 60 years is not good. In fact, it's outright terrible. We have no business being in the business of war. The sheen, the glisten, the shine off the American shoulder, the American soldier has rubbed and worn away a long time ago. And I know these are men and women, and they have kids and families, but for all intents and purposes, they have become mercenaries. And when you're a mercenary, when you're a soldier for hire, your ability to be effective is limited. You could go in, you could do a short-term, small-scale mission, usually employing stealth and subterfuge. It can be a successful operation. But a mercenary army cannot sustain a long-term conflict. Just can't. We went into Iraq for regime change, and the reason why we were able to do that is because the people were taken pretty much by surprise. They didn't have any, and they were actually, thinking, well, maybe this might be a bit better than Saddam. Boy, I mean, come on now. And Saddam Hussein was actually look, all these guys are tyrannical dictators in almost every case set up by the United States. But if you look at Saddam Hussein, he had the Ba'ath Party, it was semi-socialist, women were actually employed in a number of positions. It was not a top-down Islamic caliphate state. No, it wasn't. But all of a sudden, they decided that that's what they were going to do. That they were going to go in and regime change everything and turn everything into a Wahhabist dictate, right? That's what the plan was. If you just look at it, everything was going to be Wahhabist and everything was going to run through Saudi Arabia. You've got too many factions over there for that to actually take place. And the whole idea was to poison the well. And to, because if you go back and you look at, say, FARcon, you look at FARcon like pre-Bush, FARcon says there's no way that you could raise the Muslim world for a global caliphate. Well, 15 years later, he's singing a different tune. He's like, well, I thought that would never happen. And look what's happened. To some degree, this is true. And I'm not an Islamophobic. I'm not. But you can look at what's happened because they've created the conditions. You bomb these places over and over and over again. You turn their homes into a living hellhole. You dispossess whatever kind of leadership, no matter, whatever we thought of either Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein or potentially Assad. You depose these people, and then look who comes in and starts running the show. In Iraq's case, we still have an iron fist in Iraq. Look what happened in Libya. These places are scary now. Absolutely scary. And this is what we've been doing. So we've been running a proxy war. So there's a war going on. We have been at war. Let's make that, first of all, put that right at the top. We have been at war. And to what end or what purpose? Why have we been there? Well, certainly there's this loose idea that Syria, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, none of them are in the World Bank. Well, there's some truth to that. Did they really need to be in the World Bank? If they really wanted to run their new world order, wouldn't they be able to flip a few switches and then you just deal with these other people, these other countries? They would really be the minority, not the majority. Now, Russia has its own bank that it's starting. So maybe Russia kind of falls into that camp, and maybe that's why there's all this faux aggression with Russia. I don't, possibly. But what they really want is they want the resources. That's important. They want the gas. They want the oil. There's lots of gas and oil in Iran. Guess who doesn't have any gas or oil? The Star of David state. They don't have any gas or oil. Believe it or not. Well, they have an oil company. It's called Genie, G-E-N-I-E, Genie Oil. And they're trying to get into the Golan Heights, and that's the border with Syria. And they have a big gas pipeline there, running from Syria to Tartus, where they have a port, and that gas is taken and sold to Europe primarily. So the whole idea for the regime change is to get those resources. I mean, that's a big deal. Just like they had the resources that were captured in Iraq. And those southern oil fields in Iraq, you think that went back to the Iraqi people? Hell no. Not even close. What does Iran have? Iran has oil and gas, lots of it. So this is part of the gas problem. The gas in this case is something that they want, not that they're trying to get rid of. Gas, petroleum. This is a big issue, obviously, in the Middle East. And the resources they're gold. They're literally gold. So that's one war and it is going on. It's ongoing. And now they want to take it to another level. There's other wars going on. Donald Trump is having a war right now internally with the Justice Department. So apparently he's about to fire Rod Rosenstein, which is long overdue, by the way. Long overdue. Should never have hired him in the first place. Should never, ever hired him in the first place. So this is a tweet from Jack Posobiec. This is 35 minutes ago. President Trump is planning to fire Rod Rosenstein soon. Timeline is delayed because of Syria. Currently discussing replacements. Do yourself a favor, Donald J. Trump. Don't get somebody from fucking Goldman Sachs. In fact, maybe you want to steer clear of the whole dual citizen issue. Maybe that might actually enter into your cranium. Rod Rosenstein was part of the Obama administration. By the way, Facebook and Google have taken in dozens and dozens of people from the Obama administration. So they've now been pushed out and have infiltrated Google and Facebook. And clearly, deals were done. Handshake deals were done. We're going to bring your people in. And these are the people that are going to be involved, trust me, on the censorship issues that we're going to have to deal with. You know, I read an interesting little piece. I think it was QAnon. It was a QAnon blipvert. And QAnon was talking about this technology that Facebook is working on. And essentially, what they're working on is this kind of neural scanning that actually can track your eyes and will allow you to type at about 100 words per minute without even putting your fingers on a keyboard. So for all intents and purposes, they're creating an AI that can read your mind. How about that? That's what they're working on. Do you think Facebook's going to go away anytime soon? Do you think that if the state has an appendage that can get into you and read your mind, do you think that they're all of a sudden going to delist Facebook? Their DARPA darling project? No. That's why Mark Zuckerberg was given the kid glove treatment. Now, that's not to say that Zuckerberg won't have to go through some other trials and tribulations, but it won't be coming from those guys. He did his little perp walk on Capitol Hill. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. Our team will get back to you. We'll get back to you. How many times do you hear that? But they're thinking, oh man, rubbing their hands together. Oh, let's plug Facebook in. Let's keep it going. And let's develop these tools so we can figure out what the fuck everybody's thinking. How about that? I'm really close to getting out of Facebook, by the way. I'm thinking about it. I have a lot of really neat relationships I've connected with and built with on Facebook over the years. And it's the only way I really can stay in touch. And now I'm living in a place where I'm more isolated. I'm, kind of further off the grid. And, my social life has really changed in a lot of ways. So I'm a little hesitant to just completely burn that bridge on Facebook. But it's in my mind. It's in my consciousness. So you have Trump, he's at war. He's at war with the Department of Justice. He's at war with the FBI. He's at war with GOP, dyed-in-the-wool, rhino Republicans. He's at war with the left. He's probably at war with his own daughter and his son-in-law. Because I believe that they are diametrically opposed to what he wants or what he thinks he wants or wanted. The two sons are different. The two sons are more in alignment with Trump than Ivanka is. But Ivanka's got the power, and Kushner's got the power. He's this one constant throughout the entire theme here. People come, people go, people get kicked out, people get fired. They quit. Michael Kelly gone, Bannon gone, Rex Tillerson gone. Rosenstein's going to be gone soon. Who is it? Cohen? Is Cohen gone now? Or Mnuchin? I get these people mixed up sometimes. I can't keep up. Jared Kushner's still there. Jared Kushner is the one constant. He's the guy that needs to go. Remember, astrologically, Trump's true node is in Leo, and it's in the 12th house. Actually, take that back. It's his Pluto in Leo, 12th house, and it's Jared Kushner's true node in Leo, right on Trump's Pluto. Right on his Pluto. That has profound consequences. Pluto is the planet of death. It's the planet of destruction. Well, actually, that's Uranus, but death and destruction. That's Pluto. Pluto takes no quarter. It is the Lord of the underworld. And there's Jared Kushner. His true node, his purpose, his raison d'etre, right on Trump's Pluto and Leo in the 12th house, behind the scenes. He's a succubus. He's a total succubus. And he stays. Everybody else leaves, not Jared Kushner. And that is, between you and I, that should be moved up. It should be a much higher level priority. So we have at least 3 theaters of war, at least 3, maybe 4, within the Clinton administration. Within the Trump administration. We have the war with the FBI. We have the war with the DOJ internally. We have the war with, who else? FBI, DOJ. You probably have a war with the CIA going on. You got a war with the rhinos. You got a war with the progressive Democrats. That's at least 6 factions. Then there's Trump's war with mainstream media. And now we've got the other war going on with Syria. Oh, yeah, and then there's a war with factions inside the United States who are pro-immigration, which means that we've got to deal with people now theoretically coming up from Honduras and Guatemala. Well, there's another theater of war. So think of all these fronts that we're at war. I'm trying to show that to you. It is not a conventional war. And this gets into this piece around gas and Pisces and the final degrees of Chiron and Pisces. Because guess what? Next week, Chiron goes into Aries. And that's war. Aries is war. Aries is aggression. Now, will Chiron come in? And will we, at the 11th hour, see the error of our ways? Will we be brought face to face with our own extinction? And then humbly bow to one another and then back away? Is that going to happen? Or are we going to, or is this thing going to get pushed through by the likes of Pompeo and Bolton and Nikki Haley and all these nut jobs that Trump has surrounded himself with? Like, you know, so here's what he's done. Trump, on the advice of his son-in-law and his son-in-law's advisors and people that are connected to Trump through Goldman Sachs and the Mercers and all these people, know exactly what he did. He said, I'm going to stack the deck. I'm going to have as many powerful money people inside and around me so I can lean on them for whatever it is I need to lean on. Leverage, money, whatever. I'm going to go and I'm going to stack the deck with generals because I'm going to have economic clout and I'm going to have military clout. Between these two factions and these two functions of his presidency and cabinet, he'd be able to literally overpower people or deal with whatever kind of threat would come up from the position of having resources, connections, sway, pull, etc. Hasn't worked. It hasn't worked because in many instances those people have an agenda. And their agenda is more than likely not the same agenda that we have in this country, which is to have a quote-unquote national or sovereign experience as some other countries are afforded and allowed to do. China, for instance. China is sovereign. Look at China. Does China have to take in tens and thousands of refugees? No, of course they don't. Of course they don't. It's not part of their deal. They can run their program, but we can't run ours. You think China wants open borders? You think China just wants people running in from North Korea, South Korea, whatever other countries are bordering China? Hey, yeah, come on. You think they want them? No, what do you think would happen? They'd round them up. They'd round them up and they wouldn't waste time. They'd get them into the, organ harvesting program very quickly. But no, the United States, we can't do that. We've got to become part of this globalized, new world, new age, false new age order. I'm sorry if that seems like I'm living with a limited view of the universe, but it's quite easy for me to see. Now, would it be great if we had a world really, truly without borders that, we could transcend nationalism? Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, sure. Be fantastic. That would be ideal. But the only way utopia is and ever could exist is if when it's written about by Aristotle, Thomas More, or Francis Bacon. Other than that, it's a pipe dream. And I'm not even sure we're supposed to have utopia. I don't think we're supposed to have it here. I think we can get close. But we're long, long way from it. Awakening to the potential. So let's look at these wars. That's the problem. You see, because we are at war. And we don't know that. We can't see it. We get up, we go to work, we do our jobs, we come home, We have our simple joy, simple pleasures. Sometimes they're not so simple, and sometimes they're not so joyful. They're a part of our life. Meanwhile, there's all kinds of internecine conflict happening constantly. This is the Piscean dilemma. And if you look at it and look around, say, yeah, this is true, 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 this is true. We are at war. Shots aren't necessarily being fired. This war in Syria, the potential war in Syria, all it really would be, especially with Russia, would be an explication of all the other conflicts that we're not currently addressing, which are taking place. And this is all part of the program. You know, people are going to come to a point in time where they're not going to be able to deal with the chaos, the strain, the disorder, and we're getting really close. In a time where there was a hub of faith and sanity and community, people could lean on that. They could lean on it together. That's being obliterated. So people have no center. Where are they going to go? You know, and these are people that are remotely aware of what's taking place. What about the people that aren't aware, or they're aware at a really, really mundane level, but that mundanity is like building up inside of them and contributing to their condition? What do you think is going to happen to those people? I think we're going to have more and more people fall off. You know, they're going to fall off the edge. And so what we're going to have is we're going to have, by and large, a society that is completely unmoored and looking for some stability and some center. Oh, and trust me, they will have a solution and an answer for that. They'll provide that for when the time is right. Because just as much as they can turn the chaos on, the disorder on, just as much as they can turn people against one another, they can turn it off too. And this is an application of dark magic. It's also part of the Piscean realm of illusion that we're living in. So, you know, into the global theater steps the world savior. Have you had enough of the chaos? Have you had enough of the confusion? Do you wake up in the morning wondering if there has been a volatile tweet that will have started World War III? Don't worry, we have a solution for you. Don't think that that's outside of the script or outside of the playbook. There are people, like I got an email from Robert Singer, who's a really, really good researcher, and I really respect his work. And he says, there's no way we'd go to nuclear war. Because the people that want to run the planet want to have the planet intact. So that once they've wiped out 3/4 of us, then they can basically have the planet to themselves, have their, AI servo mechano Praetorian Guard come in and become the gods of Earth, right? The gods of the New Eden. And there's some truth to that. Like, I think they want to be able to live here without the planet being, charred and roasted, completely charred and roasted. Now, that said, there is another, and I talked about this yesterday, there is another kind of version of, an Armageddon script, an end time script. And that comes right out of the playbook of the Kabbalah and Chabad Lubavitch, in which there is a cleansing of the world. And that the world Messiah, and every generation has the world Messiah, the Messiah. And the world Messiah will come in, and that because of the integrity, the intelligence, the strength, and the divine right of the Lubavitchers, they get to rule everything. They get to run the planet. It's another part of the script. And the nuclear option, I think, is kind of built into that one. So it's not like there is kind of one singular driving force that would like to, have this hegemonic rule. I mean, there could be, groups that work together, but there could also be factions that have one version of what the planet is going to look like, another version of what the planet is going to look like, because they're the ones who are going to want to be in charge, large and in charge. And those are grafted to different kinds of mythologies in different types of eschatological theologies, right? So keep that in mind. But we're at the precipice of something here. And the most important thing that you can do is to do your best to maintain your center. And these are trying times. I'm not going to tell you that they're not. They are, but you have to maintain your center. We talked about this on Thursday. Look, it was really funny listening to Michael Savage because he was doing a similar thing to what I was doing on Wednesday's show. And people who listen to this show, they were part of it, and we were holding our attention. I'm still holding my attention. Walk around with it every single day. And so Savage went. He went on his version of that, and then the next day, he saw, like many of us did, that there was a tweet from Trump that said, "Well, we're not going to war yet. We're not." It was like he was like backing off. So Savage took this as a sign that his sermonizing and efforts were actually effective. And who knows? Maybe they are. He knows Donald Trump. But I thought it was interesting that it's like he was kind of taking credit for it. But he's not the only one, and I'm okay. I'm okay with him not being the only one or me not being. I mean, really, we need to pull this shit together. Because it's not just staving off a war. It's exposing the underlying mechanism, the satanic engine that's driving all this. That is really what we're holding space for. So we had the Skripal event where Mr. Skripal and his daughter were supposedly gassed, and he had been a Russian agent, now working for MI6, quite possibly a double agent. And that whole thing fell apart, didn't it? They had to kill their pets to sell the story. Totally fell apart. Oh, and all of a sudden, they're fine now. They came out of their gas-induced comas. Yeah, and guess what? They get to go to the United States, get new identities. Gas, boys and girls. It's a gas issue. Pisces, fumes, ethers, atmospheres that can or cannot be defined or determined. What's going on in our skies? We have chemtrails. About a week ago, people said, they stopped spraying chemtrails. They stopped spraying chemtrails. The chemtrail program's over. Not so fast. Should have seen it out here yesterday. Again, it's gas, right? It's emissions coming out of a plane. Now we have the gas event in Syria. You see how this gas theme is kind of accruing? And it's Piscean. It's vapor. There's nothing there. It's illusion. And then out of the illusion, we have the Piscean effect of what? Eye for an eye, Old Testament, Hammurabic justice. Concocted of the ethers, the thin air of nothingness, the illusion of the event that theoretically occurred. And it's not just what happened or didn't happen in Syria, in Duma. The UN now has come out and said that there's no gas attack. I mean, this extends into things like Parkland, and all these other events that have been concocted and cooked up and distilled since 2009. I mean, we go back to 9/11. It's like, are they dead? Are they alive? What's the false flag? Crisis actors. I mean, it's all, again, it's gas, illusion, mist. And we're all trying to put on the high beams and just, and navigate it. Well, one of the things you don't do is you don't put your high beams on when you're in the fog. Stay with your low beams. It's a little bit better. But we're living in a time where deception rules. The Lord or the lords of illusion are creating an imaginary tableau, and we have these actors who are literally put into place to force us to accept the extremely flimsy reality that they're concocting. And not only that, but because it's Pisces, they're playing upon our emotions. It's ridiculous. Well, we're at the end of Chiron in Pisces, and maybe, just maybe, we can dispense with this. I mean, we're going to have one more run with Chiron in Pisces at the end of this year. It comes back for about, 6-7 months. But maybe we could just dispense with this for a while. And understand that we're always being played, that our natural spiritual tendencies are being violated on a frequent basis. And this is a great sacrilege, because it is a gift to have empathy. It is a gift to be able to project yourself into another person's condition. Creates compassion. And that gift has been violated again and again and again to serve an agenda and to create a world that is built on illusion and lies. And well-meaning and good people have bought into it. And they've helped create this matrix, this illusory matrix that we've been inhabiting. And it's only when you step back and begin to disassemble these things and see them in a different kind of light without becoming cynical or snide, because it's very easy to do that. That's like the fallback position. And I've been there. You'll see somebody like this. If you go into like Zero Hedge or RT or some website, there's always going to be some know-it-all in the comments section who knows a lot of stuff and is deeply ironic, dark, and right, but ultimately nihilistic. Doesn't help anybody. And I get it. It's a fallback position. It's one that's kind of safe in some ways, because it allows you to be detached and distanced and have a dark and ironic relationship with what's going on. And that's okay. You can see the dark irony in things. But that's actually kind of a preconditioned mindset that they want to push people into. It's, what it is. It's kind of like the last stage or the last fallback of demoralization. Like one step further from back is, you're off the cliff. But I'll sit here at the edge of the cliff and smoke a cigarette and have a drink and basically see it, call it out for what it is. And do so in a way that's kind of maybe snide or what's the word I'm looking for? Smart alecky, snarky. But it doesn't really help anybody. And it's emotionally, it's a terrible place to be as a person, to be honest with you, because it's a cul-de-sac. And you can see everything and understand everything and be able to, enact your powers of cynicism, unleash your powers of cynicism. But ultimately, it doesn't help anybody, and it certainly doesn't help you or them. So then what? Well, then there's some other thing that has to come into play. And that thing that comes into play is you got to get up and you got to work towards something each day. And it may be in vain, but it is your human birthright to do so. It's what we're here to do, is to work towards something every day and get better at it, even when the light is flickering, okay? Because if the light flickers and it goes out, it's going to go out. And there's not a hell of a lot you and I can do about it at that point. And I hope and pray that, you and everybody else that you know are prepared for moments like that. And we don't want to invest in them emotionally. We don't want to invest into that future reality of the end game. So the best thing you can do is to get up every day and make a difference with knowing everything that you know. Understanding everything that you can understand at a global level. And I'm not even talking about the dynamics inside of your own family or your community, which can be as equally and if not more complicated. Put that into your burden bucket. Well, you can only do so much. And you can attend to those things and try to be the best person you can. But I'm telling you, your job, your goal, your mission in this life is to get up every day, get better, make the world a better place, contribute in whatever way, shape, or form you can. Knowing what's going on, right? Knowing what's circling around us. And to me, that is probably the most kind of heroic and authentic stance all of us can have. Can you devote 15 minutes a day to get on a phone, call your congressman, your senator, the White House? Hey, can you please stay the fuck out of Syria? Of course, nicely. Sure you can. And you get back into your world. So, okay, where can I get better? How can I get better? Because that's how we add to things. It's how we add to our experience here. And until final breath is gone, you're either impacting positive or negatively. You figure out where you are on that side of the ledger sheet. See, that's the other side of Pisces. Pisces is this emotional drama. Aries is taking, here we're going to get into a little astrology here. Chiron and Aries is taking control of some of this stuff. Right? We're at the edge. Thank God we're at the final days of Chiron and Pisces. I can't wait till we've moved on to another version of Chiron. And you know what? I'll take war and the prospect of war with Chiron and Aries over the hand-wringing and the victimization and the hashtag blank strong over Chiron and Pisces. And I hope you found your faith through Chiron and Pisces, because we're at the last days of that. And when Chiron moves into Aries, whatever level of faith, whatever level of spiritual commitment that you have derived inside of yourself, you're going forward with it now, with Chiron and Aries. And Chiron and Aries takes care of things. It gets shit done. It's moving off the sidelines. Aries is about bravery. Although Aries wouldn't consider it bravery, Aries just does what it does. So we've got to have some of this in our lives. Getting up every day is an act of bravery. And making things better every day is an act of honor. It's not always easy, and there are days that are tough days. There are days when you just want to put the covers over your head. And I think we owe it to ourselves to have those days every now and then. But that's not where we can stay. You do that to the best of your ability, when all this other stuff is going on, and then you let go. The rest is out of your hands, right? It's out of your hands. But knowing that you're living your life to the fullest capacity to impact your life and ultimately the life of other people, because that's what we're here to do. We're not in a global monastery. We live and interact with others. And this is the greatest gift that we can bring to one another. This is how God knows itself, right? It's through one another. It's through these relationships, good and bad. Challenging, liberating, trusting, loving, right? It's part of the deal. So let's take a step back. Let's take a step back from this gaseous cloud that has enveloped our consciousness and our awareness, vis-a-vis the gas of Skripal, the gas of Syria, right? The gas pipeline that runs through Syria, through the Golan Heights, the gas of the talking heads, blathering, 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 blathering. Reading the script off the party line. We'll take a step back, because get ready. Chiron and Aries, it's going to be something. And shortly thereafter that, Uranus and Taurus. Big changes coming. Really big changes. We got the new moon coming up. So I would definitely think about the new moon from your own personal perspective, emotionally. What do you commit to in terms of actualization and to some degree, the perfection of your will, which of course is an expression of your higher will, which is of course an expression of God's will. What are you going to do? Maybe it's just an exercise program. I'm riding a bike every day. I'm enjoying it. I think that's about it. What are we going for? What, about an hour and 10 minutes here? I think that's about it. I'll be back on Sunday nights with the live stream. And I just want to say, and I don't do this very often, I think we all have to have some investment in our works. I think that's important. But I'm not a horn tooter. But I will say that the last couple of weeks in terms of readings have been really tremendous. And I've actually been kind of cracking new codes with astrology and charts and a whole new awareness with charts. And one of the things that I want to work on while I'm here, living in Flyover, aka Fredericksburg, is I want to work on a series about living your life through the chart, because I've cracked some codes here, and they're really helpful, really, really helpful. So I'm going to work on that, and I think I may do a webinar, and it may be more than just one. It might be a 4 or 5 parts, 3 or 4 part series, because I've untangled some things here that actually make a lot of sense. Okay, let's give it a wrap. And we got a comment here in the old chat room. What do we got? Let's see. Who said what here? Robert, when does the actual age of Aquarius begin? Oh, good question, Paula. Also, somebody asked me about Crow 777's channel over on YouTube, which talks about the Saturnization of Earth, and are we living essentially in a compound of Saturn? And I would say yes, absolutely. That there has been a concerted effort to move us into a Saturnian cage or a black box. And all you have to look at, wrap your head around with, is the Kaaba in Mecca and the amount of energy that circulates around the Kaaba, especially during Ramadan, because the people who are in motion around the Kaaba are actually performing the function of the rings of Saturn. Right? It's like a ring around the Kaaba. The Kaaba is the black hypercube. So yeah, there is a Saturnization of the planet taking place. And ironically, I live in a town where the goat is held in rather high esteem. There's a lot of goats out here. And the nickname for the two schools, middle school and the high school, is the Billies, as in billy goats. So I might be getting my own Saturnian and Capricornian education in a different kind of way. So Paula asked, when does the actual age of Aquarius begin? Well, Paula, I think it's when the masters and the lords of Aquarius say so. That was kind of an ironic answer. There are different ideas about this. Some people believe that it started in 1967 during the Summer of Love. That's one version of it. There are other people who believe that the age of Aquarius began in 2013 when the Mayan calendar expired. There are other people who believe that the age of Aquarius will begin when Pluto is in Aquarius. That's where I'm putting my bets down on. So when Pluto moves into Aquarius, which is 2024, and Saturn moves into Aquarius at the beginning of 2021. So we're going to have Saturn in Aquarius, followed by Pluto in Aquarius. And to me, this is kind of the launching pad for whatever kind of Aquarian ideas, ideals, and technologies are in place during that time. Some of them can be good, some of them can be not so good. We've got some ground to cover before then. We've got that Saturn-Pluto conjunction coming up in February of 2020. And that's the big one. Huge. All right, that does it for today's show. You know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to see open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have a great weekend. And here's a little Philip K. Dick remix.
living in a computer-programmed reality. We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.